I was once having a conversation with Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose. If you're not familiar, they're the people who were responsible for what's called Sokal Squared. This is where they drafted a bunch of fake stories and fake studies, and got them submitted to peer-reviewed journals and approved. One of the studies they made that got approved was a rewrite of Mein Kampf. It's this whole crazy thing where they're trying to point out that ideology is pervasive among the humanities, and they wanted to highlight that so long as you adhere to certain rules, certain types of language, you will likely be published in a peer-reviewed journal. What's really funny is one professor even said they produced 7 years worth of tenure-earning studies in a year, and they were all fake. You gotta imagine there's gonna be a lot of people who probably want to do that. Now, in this discussion I was having with them, I said I don't believe that colleges are the root of the indoctrination. A lot of people on the right believe that colleges are indoctrinating kids to become social justice warriors or regressive or communist or socialist, whatever. While that may be true, I don't believe it's on purpose. A lot of people think it's a big conspiracy that they want to infiltrate the learning institutions. Maybe some people did, nothing's absolute. But I think the reality is just that people who hang out together start sharing politics, and you have to understand what college is. Why is it that so many college students would like socialism? Well, there's two reasons. The first, they're in a facility where they have an authority telling them what they can or can't do, and everything is provided for them for the most part. Where did the money come from for them to go to school? Mostly loans. They didn't work for it. The government gave them money, they went to school for it, now they want the government to pay it off, right? So naturally, you've got people in this position where it's institutionalized, there's an authority, there's no voting, the school is as it is, and you must do as you're told. Well, they're going to advocate for the same thing once they get out. But then there's the issue of massive debt. A lot of these kids are told to go to college, they take out massive debt, and when they leave school and they can't find a job, they can't pay it off, they say, hey, the only solution is a government program. The government needs to relieve this, and thus you're going to get socialism. But let's talk about the social justice stuff, right? Because socialism and social justice are different, there's some overlap, there's a lot of mix here. A lot of people think universities are doing this on purpose. And what I was saying to Peter Boghossian was that I think it's actually just dominoes falling down. It's not like somebody orchestrated this big scheme. Because you have to take into consideration how the media manipulates people into supporting far-left policies outside of schools. It's not that people are, the schools have planted the seeds in these kids. To an extent, yes. It's that once they get older, they start reading these websites designed to anger them with social justice causes, and then those kids in school will share that within the school, creating an incubator for these kinds of ideas. It's essentially like a dog chasing its tail. The problem just keeps making more of the same problem. The more these college kids are indoctrinated by this ideology, they get out, they graduate, they write stories about it, which infects the next generation, and the incubation gets worse and worse and worse. However, there is still some evidence to suggest that institutionally, yes, it's true, these universities have problems with indoctrinating people. This story from Real Clear Investigations, part of Real Clear Politics, it looks like, pledging allegiance to diversity and to the tenure for which it stands. This is by Max Diamond of Real Clear Investigations from just a couple days ago. Mathematicians who want tenure at UCLA have to do more than show a facility with numbers. They also have to pledge in writing a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusivity. And my God, what does that have to do with math? Seriously. In fact, all professors applying for a tenure-track position at UCLA must write a statement on their commitment to diversity, showing, for example, their record of success advising women and minority graduate students, according to the UCLA's Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Such mandated statements reflect a push by college bureaucrats to ratchet up the requirements to achieve more diverse campuses, said Peter Wood, president of the National Association of Scholars. Until recently, diversity programs tended to focus on mandatory training and sanctions for policy violators. Now, you have to make a public confession of faith, said Wood. You're essentially citing a creed, and all the more effectively, they force you to put that creed into your own words. Now, one thing Boghossian, Lindsay, and Pluckrose did say to me, it was an argument. Well, I should say it was a discussion. Is intersectionality a religion? And there are a lot of people who've brought up this idea that intersectional feminism is a religion. However, there's no God. There's no deity they worship. And that started making me think, like, well, look, does a religion need a God? The answer is no. Buddhism, as my understanding, doesn't have a God, and it's still a religious and spiritual practice. Now, is intersectionality spiritual in any way? No, still not really. So it's more of a cultish ideology. I was speaking with a high-profile feminist a couple of years ago, and I said I felt like it was a cult, right? And they told me, no, you're wrong, it's not, and then they changed their tune a little bit later on. Because the thing is, the social justice left acts very much like an extremely dogmatic religion. I don't think it's a one-for-one, like it is a religion, but look at what happens with Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly made a comment about why she didn't understand why blackface was racist. Did she say that blackface was okay? No, she was asking why it wasn't okay. She's fired. She was fired from her job. But hold on. We do have another story. I don't have it pulled up, but it's from, the conservatives are running this like crazy. Jimmy Kimmel has donned blackface. Jimmy Fallon has donned blackface. And Sarah Silverman has donned blackface. Have they been fired from their jobs? Absolutely not. You know why? Because even though they've transgressed against the ideology, they still try to recruit for the ideology, albeit inadvertently. I don't think, Fallon and Kimmel and all them are going out and advocating for, going to these schools and giving these pledges. The point is, as long as you agree not to push back or offend this group, you're fine. Take a look at me. I'm actually like an inversion of this. I actually think some social justice is a really good thing. The things I take issue with are like restricting people based on race, in my opinion, is not social justice. What is social justice? Like, when real estate companies used to manipulate markets by specifically scaring people about minority people moving in, it's called blockbusting. There was also redlining. They said, hey, you can't do that. That's illegal. Why? The fundamental principle was that you cannot discriminate against someone based on their race, but now we've inverted everything. Now it's straight up like the left is saying, and the ACLU is saying to Harvard, it's good that Asians are being discriminated against because it hurts the white man a little bit. Thus, they are now actively advocating for programs that hurt minorities and other people based on their race, of which I think is not social justice. However, so long as you adhere to the rules, I'm sorry, I take that back, I don't think they have rules, but so long as you adhere to a base set of tribalistic principles, you're fine. And because I don't, they don't like me. Plain and simple, I'll say it. You should not be allowed to discriminate against someone based on their race. However, they're actively advocating for the discrimination against people based on their race. Thus, they're going to take issue with it. So what happens? You can break the rules so long as you act like they're the good guys and defend them when they want to be defended. And if you actually stand on principle, well, they don't really have principles for the most part, so you're going to be the bad guy. So they say, the University of California system is especially active. UCLA, UC Riverside, UC San Diego, UC Berkeley, all require such statements. UC Santa Cruz requires them for candidates for faculty senate positions. The written pledges are used to identify candidates who have the professional skills, experience, and/or willingness to engage activities that will advance our campus diversity and equity goals, said Judy Piercy, Senior Director of Strategic Communications at UC San Diego. There are big incentives to achieving tenure. Not only do tenured professors typically make tens of thousands of dollars more annually than their non-tenured colleagues, but they cannot be fired except in the most extraordinary cases. No one knows how many schools require such diversity statements, but the practice appears to be in vogue. Vassar College, for example, requires tenure-track job candidates to write about their contributions to social justice. Both Vanderbilt University and the University of Pennsylvania provide guides on how to write an effective diversity statement. So look, I'm not someone who advocates for the idea that universities are by design trying to force people into this ideology. I don't think that's the case. I think they're businesses. And I think we've got a snowball rolling down a hill. Now, Boghossian and others said to me that they believe it was rooted, that it started in universities with, gender studies and women's studies, and they started making claims about the patriarchy, and that was the seed. But I said, hold on. Those ideas came from somewhere else before the universities. And I think it has to do with just, we take something really good. The civil rights movement was a really good thing. And there are a lot of things that I think we still need to continue to do to make sure we ensure civil rights to all peoples. But I look at it like this, like an immune system, okay? The immune system does a really good job, but what happens when there's nothing left to fight and it goes out of control? Well, you die. It's called an autoimmune disease. I don't know the exact, I think it might be like lupus or something. You have like leukemia. Basically, your body starts producing too many white blood cells, or the white blood cells run amok and start damaging the system, and then you die. The civil rights movement was like the immune response to injustice, saying people are deserving of their civil rights, and the Constitution needs to, well, not the Constitution, but the Constitution does guarantee it, and the law needs to reflect that. And the change happened. But what happens when the same people who believe in this ideology continue to fight when there's not much left to fight, or the fight isn't as brutal as it used to be? Well, they still go hard. They still advocate for extreme things. Now you're seeing, like, the craziest thing happened. I tweeted something about the left is pushing me away. The Republicans, for the most part, don't share my values, so I don't know if I want to vote for them. But there are some Republicans who are actually liberal, but they're just running on the Republican ticket. That I understand. But the general idea is like, look, I think social programs aren't a bad thing. I do think we need to deal with corruption and fix them. But the idea that the government shouldn't play a role in, like, welfare programs, in my opinion, is incorrect. I think the government can do it so long as we have the proper safeguards to prevent corruption and other things. And people on the right tend to be not in favor of a lot of these programs. I think it can be done right. I do. I'm also in favor of a progressive tax. A lot of people on the right aren't. It's not absolute. I understand there are Republicans who have varying beliefs, but this is kind of the core issue when I'm looking at the parent parties and the message they put out. In response to this tweet, someone on the left just says, they start attacking me, saying that my beliefs are, so, like, flexible that I'll just vote for the racist, misogynist Nazis and all that stuff. And I'm like, what? And then they were like, why would you ever not consider voting for Democrats? And when I pointed out the identitarianism of the left is going insane, the refusal to call out violence, and their response was, oh, both sidesism. Yes, quite literally both sidesism. Anyway, the last thing I want to say is, the point I'm trying to make is that this person worked in media. And what they do is they'll produce articles and content that have this ideology ingrained. Young people will start reading these things as they get older. Once they go to college, these ideas will be infecting them from the outside and from the inside. It's multifaceted. The universities are now having these pledges as a requirement, and that's freaky. Because you can call out religion. You can demand that we have a right to religious freedom, and that's enshrined in our Constitution. However, we don't have the same thing guaranteeing political affiliation or political ideology. And thus, they're actually requiring people to pledge to a political ideology. Perhaps we need an update to our Constitution or a law that states political ideology is a protected class, and no one can coerce you to believe something or pledge to believe something you don't agree with. Otherwise, this will continue to spread, and the rampant racist identitarianism of the far left will continue to outpace that of the right. And these people are hiding behind anti-racism and are going to get away with it. And that freaks me out. So, that's all I'll say on that. But I got another video coming up in just a few minutes, and this one might be the most insane thing I've ever read. Vox actually arguing that the government should engage in a concerted effort to drug our tap. I'm not kidding. This sounds crazy. A Vox article is arguing for putting lithium in water because it's an antidepressant. I kid you not. This video will be up in just about a few minutes, so stick around.